This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Before I start anything, I want to remind you guys to subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you get those notifications whenever we drop an episode. We really appreciate it. Also, make sure to follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're on social media-wise, we are on as well. And also, don't forget to leave a 5-star review and leave some comments. We also always appreciate that. I hope wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, your family is happy and healthy and you're doing well. So we have a fantastic show for you guys today. A little bit later on in the show, I'm going to be talking about Trevor Lawrence and how I think he is the next great quarterback prospect coming out of college football. Then I'm going to give you some record predictions in the NFL. We're going to start with the AFC today. And my next episode, I'll be doing the NFC record predictions. So that's going to be what your favorite team is going to get record-wise, where they're going to place in division, things like that. And stick around to the end of the show for my last segment. I'm going to be predicting each NBA award, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, all that good stuff. I'll be predicting all of those at the end of the show, so make sure you stick around with that for that. But I'm actually going to start today's episode with some baseball. So literally like 20 minutes before I hit record just now, there was a report that came out from John Hyman, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. He's an insider for MLB Network, and he said, breaking news, the MLB and the Players Union are closing in on an agreement to play the 2020 season via, sources. Deals expected to be, with included pay, obviously. They have settled on some sort of number. It hasn't leaked out yet. And also include some expanded playoffs. I'm not sure that expanded playoffs would, start this season. I'm assuming it is, but it could also be years in the future. So I want to start off with this because this is obviously, some breaking news, the leading topic in the sports world today. Now, I am so happy this got done because I'm not sure baseball would have survived. I mean, they would have survived. The MLB would have, stayed in place. But I think if the MLB decided to take an entire year and a half off from playing Major League Baseball with TV ratings, everything, that could have done serious damage to the sport in an area where baseball, there's arguments all the time. Is baseball dying? Is the MLB dying? Are the ratings going down? So I decided to do some research. And yes, the ratings have been going down pretty consistently for Major League Baseball, TV rating-wise, as well as ticket sales-wise. According to the New York Times, the MLB going from last year and then the year before that, so at the end of last year, ticket sales went down almost 2%. That's just taking in all of the major league teams. And if you look at some TV ratings, MLB opening night ratings via ESPN have been going down steadily ever since 2008, with only slight increases when a team like the Yankees or the Chicago Cubs are on. As for World Series ratings, those have been going down pretty consistently as well since 1984. 1984 they reached a high, and they've just been going down and down ever since, with a slight increase when the Chicago Cubs won that World Series a few years ago. Now, I think, for me at least, I think a lot of people can probably relate to this. For me, baseball was my first sports love. My dad loved it. I grew up playing baseball. I would love to go to the ballpark with my friends, with my family. I'd love to play on in Little League and then all the way through middle school and, Town League and things like that. And I think a lot of people can relate to baseball might have been one of the first sports they were introduced to playing-wise, television-wise. Your first live sporting event for me was a baseball game. Maybe it was for you as well. So I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but for me, baseball was my first sports love. And then over the years, I started to love football and basketball and college football and other sports like that. And, in terms of my sports preference, baseball became something of a back burner, even though I played baseball the most and things like that. And, baseball hasn't really been in the spotlight of sports for quite some time. The last time I can remember when baseball was really in the spotlight of the sports world was when the Chicago Cubs won the World Series. And since then, the only other real major sports headline, like I mentioned before, World Series ratings are going down, is when the Astros cheated, and that was a huge story. That was obviously a major talking point. But I really do believe that this deal might actually be a blessing in disguise for baseball. I just talked about how I'm not sure they would have, if the baseball world would have survived a year and a half without baseball, would fans be coming back? Would the casual sports fan, they're already deciding to turn on the NFL, deciding to turn on the NBA instead. But now that baseball is back and we have been missing baseball and we have been missing sports, I can almost guarantee you there's going to be a spike in television ratings for baseball. I'm assuming they're playing with no fans, so ticket sales won't be there obviously this year, but in years, future. So what this deal can really do is it can reintroduce a lot of casual sports fans to the game of baseball, America's great pastime, which I really do believe can be a blessing in disguise. And let me go through a couple reasons on why I can think that. So ESPN also reported after, John Hyman said that they're close to a deal, the commissioner came out and said that him and the leader of the players union have, a framework of a deal, and hopefully they can get that agreed upon soon. So again, looks like baseball's happening. ESPN said that it appears it's going to be around 60 games, which is actually a good thing when you consider it. Baseball is usually in the high hundreds for baseball. There's a ton of baseball games, and the whole thing around baseball is that not every game matters. Only the big games matter towards October and things like that. With a 60-game baseball season, literally each and every game will actually matter. It will rival more of an NBA season than a traditional baseball season, which actually for TV ratings will help Major League Baseball. Every game matters for your team. Every game matters for the Yankees. Every game matters for the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Astros, the Mets, anyone, the Giants. Every single team will have to go all in every single week. Pitching is going to be more important. Obviously some stats will go down because we don't have the full season, but what this is going to do is going to draw in the casual sports fan. I know I'm going to start watching baseball again. For me as a casual baseball fan, I would watch the big games. I'd watch playoff games. I think baseball in October is something magical, and that's something unrivaled that I don't think other sports can quite capture. Going to a live baseball playoff game, I don't know if you guys have ever done it, is one of the greatest experiences you can literally go through. And like I keep mentioning, I think this is going to reintroduce a lot of casual sports fans to the game of baseball. Now, if the rumored starting date is correct, it's appearing to be a 60-game season that will start mid-July, around July 10th through July 15th is when they're hoping to have opening week, according to reports. This is a perfect time. This means baseball would come back before the NBA, right after the MLS, before football would obviously start off in preseason or training camp, so baseball isn't starting in August or something like that. And baseball will have a 2 to 3 week time period where the sports stage is really centered on them. And if you follow baseball at all, the Dodgers are supposed to be really good this year. The Yankees are supposed to be really good this year. Things like that matter. When the big market teams are good, people will watch. People will talk about it. People will write about it. People will sell jerseys, things like that. So when you have a combination of a 60-game season, the Dodgers and Yankees are being good, and everything that goes along with that, you have the potential to put yourself back into the sports spotlight. Now, if we can get a Yankees World Series, Yankees-Dodgers World Series, again, that's only going to exponent things. People are going to want to watch a lot of another thing. So there's another thing here. A lot of people say that especially local baseball is dying. Now, if you're a small market team, if you're a team that hasn't been good or isn't good in the past couple of years, this is also going to change things. Yes, we know that the Dodgers and the Yankees are going to be good this year, but don't be surprised if there's some surprise teams in baseball this year due to, this big hiatus, not starting on time properly. Who knows what kind of shape guys are going to be coming back in. Have they been throwing? Have they been hitting the cages? Things like that. You haven't been allowed to work in facilities in a lot of states and a lot of teams. You're not going to be allowed to work out. How will teams respond to the long break? Again, with the 60-game season, the pressure will be on each and every week. How will young guys, react to the pressure? Will more veteran teams be the ones who are taking charge and who are doing better this baseball season? All these things like that are things to watch for the baseball season. Again, I'm so happy that baseball got this done, because if you remember the reports a couple of days ago, it was looking really dire. It was looking like there might not be baseball in 2020. I believe the commissioner actually came out and said that he can't guarantee that there will be baseball played in 2020. He said that a couple days ago. So it's absolutely incredible for things to happen like that. And like I mentioned before, baseball was my first sports love. And I think it's a lot of people's first sports love. They grew up playing it, grew up watching it, going to the games with their parents, going to the games with their family. The ballpark experience is still a thing, in my opinion. And people remember that. People remember those memories of going to Fenway Park, of going to Yankee Stadium and watching, their favorite players, watching Mariano Rivera, watching David Ortiz, watching those big moments. And I think baseball has something that not a lot of sports they're still to this day trying to emulate. I don't think you can replicate in an NFL game, in a NBA game, the power of a live baseball game. It's an experience. You're not just going there to watch a game. It's a family bonding. It's a family friendly. It is a very, very, simple, calming, relaxing experience. And then when you get to the playoffs in October, like I mentioned a little bit more, I'll go a little bit more in depth on this. Baseball in October, playoff baseball, is something absolutely magical. There's something about it that people in other sports can't really describe. They can't really emulate. Playoff football is awesome. The college football playoffs is awesome. NBA playoffs are obviously incredible. Those will be happening soon as well. But there's something about a Game 7 in the World Series in a cold winter night at Yankee Stadium, at Fenway Park, at Wrigley Field. Things like that you just can't replicate. And I feel like the sport of baseball has gotten away from that. And one of the things why baseball has been declining in comparison to other sports is their inability to change. Baseball seems to be the most rigid sport, from its owners to its commissioner to its, CEOs, everything about adapting and changing the sport. For years, people have been complaining the game's too long. For years, people have been saying it's not exciting enough. We need more home runs. We need more young stars. We need to if you remember the commercial that was circulating for a long time last year was let the kids play. Things like that. You need more superstars in baseball. You need the Mariano Riveras. You need the Ted Williams. You need the Babe Ruth. You need all of these superstar factors. It's why one of the reasons why the NBA and the NFL are lapping Major League Baseball in viewership and fans and revenue and jersey sales is because of their ability to change. The NFL saw that, in against the Saints-Rams game where there was the pass interference call, boom, next year there's a new rule for that. Every single year the NFL seems to adapt and change, which is why they're the king of ratings. The NBA is a star-driven league. Each and every year a new star comes into the NBA, rookie Zion Williamson this year. Next year, Anthony Edwards, who will be coming in. LeBron James is still king. Kevin Durant will be coming back next year. Kyrie Irving, obviously, is a great player. Anthony Davis, Giannis Antetokounmpo. The list goes on and on. James Harden, Russell Westbrook. Another reason why, the NBA is lapping the MLB in ratings and revenue. But if you look at the star players of the MLB, they're not marketed as much as the NBA or the NFL. Baseball seems to be more about the organization, the team, the brand, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Astros, the Giants, things like that, instead of more about the individual player. And that's something that I think baseball needs to work on and change. And I think that this 60-game season will be able to showcase that, because it won't be as much about the organization. It'll be about the individual players who step up night in, night out in a shortened 60-game season where every game matters. There's no games off. There's no games you can take for rest. You need to have, these star players. Mike Trout, arguably, is the best athlete at his sport in the world. You can totally make the argument that Mike Trout is better at baseball than LeBron James is at basketball. When you talk about statistic-wise, Mike Trout is an all-time great talent, all-time great player. And if he was walking down the street right now, a lot of people wouldn't know who he was. He plays for the Angels in Los Angeles as well. Things like that. You need to be able to market your stars if you're baseball. You need the ability to change. And I think that this 60-game season will hopefully give them the opportunity to do that. Baseball is going to have about a 20 to 21 day window where they are the only major sport playing. That is their moment. They need to siege it. They need to reintroduce these casual sports fans, people who fell in love with baseball when they were a kid, when they were a young adult, and they need to reintroduce the sport of baseball back to those people by marketing their stars. Again, the 60-game season will mean every game matters. The big market teams will be good. The Yankees, the Dodgers, that's going to boost ratings. I'm really excited to see how baseball takes advantage of this opportunity. But again, they need to change. They need to market their stars more. They need to, again, let the kids play like those, commercials always say. So it's going to be really interesting to see. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I'm going to be talking a little bit about college football, specifically one man. His name is Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback of Clemson, and why I think he could be one of the greatest quarterback prospects of all time. And make sure to stick around to the end of the show. I will be predicting each and every NBA award, so make sure you stick around from that. We'll be right back after the short break. It's the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for listening so far. Just got finished talking about hopefully that new baseball deal that will be in place shortly between the Players Union and the owners and the commissioner. So we will be able to see baseball here shortly. Hopefully that gets through in the next couple of days, if not later today. All right, I want to switch gears now to some college football and specifically Trevor Lawrence, because I saw something yesterday that absolutely blew my mind. A couple days or weeks ago, Pro Football Focus, which is a football analytics, website and tool that, they use for the NFL. You've seen it all over ESPN, things like that. They say that there is a good chance, if not they completely believe, that Justin Fields, the quarterback for Ohio State, is a better quarterback prospect than Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Not only that, but a couple weeks ago, Mel Kiper, who is the lead draft analyst for ESPN, said that there's a good chance, or even just a chance at all, that Justin Fields is taken ahead of Trevor Lawrence in the 2021 NFL draft, the next NFL draft in line. And it absolutely blew my mind because I think we're forgetting who Trevor Lawrence is. Now, Trevor Lawrence has one bad game, you could call it a bad game, against the greatest college football team, arguably, of all time, last year's LSU team, which had, I believe, between 12 and 15 players drafted from that team. Now, Trevor Lawrence has an okay to bad game against them in the national championship game, after not losing a game in his collegiate career, but I'll get into that in a minute. And everyone, now the discussion's starting. Well, is Trevor Lawrence all that? Is Trevor Lawrence this generational quarterback prospect people were hyping up to be his freshman year? Is Justin Fields better than him? Maybe Trevor Lawrence will go, top 10, but he won't be the first quarterback taken. Just stop it. Trevor Lawrence is one of the best quarterback prospects of all time. He is arguably the greatest quarterback prospect I have ever seen in my lifetime, and it will be for a lot of people's lifetimes. He is better than Joe Burrow. He's better than Tua Tagovailoa, better than a lot of other quarterback prospects we've seen. The last quarterback prospect that I can remember that was maybe as good as Trevor Lawrence was Andrew Luck out of Stanford. He was also obviously really good and one of the best quarterback prospects of all time. And what do you see when that happens? Now, obviously, I'm telling you right now, somebody, I don't know who, probably Jacksonville, the Jacksonville Jaguars, is going to tank for Trevor Lawrence. And you might have think you know tanking. You might have thought that the Miami Dolphins last year were tanking for Tua. You might have thought that, the Cincinnati Bengals towards the end of the season were tanking for Joe Burrow. You might have even think that the Cardinals, with Josh Rosen, were going after Kyler Murray towards the end of the season. Maybe, maybe not. I will tell you right now, you don't know true tanking until you see what a team does for Trevor Lawrence this year. It will rival what the Indianapolis Colts did in 2012 for Andrew Luck, which is after Peyton Manning went down with a neck surgery. The Colts did not look for a viable backup option. They didn't sign a veteran to try to keep the season alive. They completely were okay with having a terrible season. I think a lot of people called it the suck for luck year. That is what is going to happen for Trevor Lawrence. I am telling you right now, a team is going to win 2 games max to be able to secure them. There might be a very well good chance that a team goes 0-16 for Trevor Lawrence. So let's get into it, the Trevor Lawrence versus Justin Fields debate, which in my opinion isn't a debate at all. Now I want to start off by saying Justin Fields is another incredible quarterback prospect. I would put him right up there with the Tua Tagovailoas, the Burrows, the Kyler Murrays, things like that. But he's just not on the same tier as Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence started his freshman year right away. For Clemson, one of the powerhouses of college football, multiple time, college football champion. That's what, Clemson has been working with. They weren't like this bottom tier program when Trevor Lawrence came in. They had, Deshaun Watson for those years. DeAndre Hopkins came through that program. Things like that, or players like that. So his freshman year, Trevor Lawrence has a completion percentage of 65, throws for 3,280 yards, 30 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Wins the national championship, absolutely obliterates Tua Tagovailoa and Alabama, one of the better college football programs, one of the better college football teams in college football history. Completely dismantled, blown out of the water by Trevor Lawrence and the Clemson Tigers. Trevor Lawrence gets all this hype, generational QB prospect, best player in college football, all warranted. I agree with all of it. Now let's move to his true sophomore season. So this kid is 20 years old? 19, 20 years old? And he throws for more yards, has a higher completion percentage, more touchdowns, had a little bit more interceptions, but still only 8 interceptions is ridiculous. So he threw for 3,665 yards, 36 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and had a completion percentage that was higher at 66. That is ridiculous stuff. So he followed up a true freshman national championship run with a better season, wins the ACC yet again, blows out everybody in the ACC, goes to the national championship game, has a rough game where he throws for almost 250 yards, which is considered a rough game. No touchdowns, no picks, obviously. Loses to one of the greatest college football programs of all time. And now we have Trevor Lawrence under a microscope, saying he's not all that, overhyped, overrated, things like that. Let me give you some players who did not start their true freshman year. At least didn't play in every single game their freshman year like Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence played in all 15. All right? So let's compare that to some of the other players, some great NFL quarterbacks and some great college people who did not start every game of their freshman year. Patrick Mahomes did not start every game of his freshman year. He's pretty good. Kyler Murray sat behind Baker Mayfield and transferred from Texas A&M. He's pretty good. Tua Tagovailoa obviously is one of the best quarterback prospects we've ever seen. Went the second quarterback taken last year to the Miami Dolphins. He didn't play every game his freshman year, didn't play in the national championship game. Joe Burrow got beat out by Dwayne Haskins and J.T. Barrett at Ohio State, had to transfer to LSU, didn't really pop until his 5th year senior season. That's when we talk about Joe Burrow. He didn't start his freshman year. Justin Fields, who apparently everybody is saying is better than Trevor Lawrence now, was not handed the keys at Georgia. People forget. He committed to Georgia. Georgia said, no, we still like Jake Fromm. We're not going to turn over to you. Jake Fromm, who's an NFL quarterback now for the Buffalo Bills. And Justin Fields obviously transferred to Ohio State. All those players did not start their freshman year, including Deshaun Watson. So Deshaun Watson was obviously at Clemson, only played half of his freshman season. All of these players, Justin Fields, Joe Burrow, Tua, some people believe are better than Trevor Lawrence, specifically Justin Fields. Let alone the fact that Trevor Lawrence started his freshman year. But to start your freshman year, throw 30 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, over 3,000 yards, 65% completion percentage, and win a national championship. What is there to nitpick? What is there to not like? He beat out Kelly Bryant, who was a great quarterback for Clemson, had them ranked in the top 2 every single year there. Dabo Swinney, one of the better college quarterbacks, or college football head coaches, said, nope, Kelly Bryant, you've done great for this program. Trevor Lawrence can take us to the next level. He wasn't wrong. That is how special Trevor Lawrence is. He is 6'6", 220 pounds, has an absolute ballistic missile attached to his right shoulder. He can move, he can spread the field, he can be a distributor, he can be a strong arm quarterback, extremely accurate, good leader, everything you want in a quarterback prospect. And this is one of the problems we have in sports. We see greatness, and instead of appreciating the greatness that we're seeing right in front of our eyes, we decide to nitpick it. Oh, it's not good enough. He's not this. He's overhyped. We do it with LeBron James all the time in the NBA. He's overhyped. He's really not that good. He's got good teammates around him. Of course he has good teammates around him. He plays for Clemson. But here's the difference between playing for a program and you're good. You know who was a good quarterback because the system was good around him? If you remember, A.J. McCarron won national championships for Alabama. That team was stacked. He had running backs. He had a defense. And he didn't do anything in the NFL. You know why? Because he didn't elevate Alabama. Alabama elevated A.J. McCarron. And Clemson, while it is Trevor Lawrence is in a way elevated by the Clemson offense, the Clemson coaching staff, Trevor Lawrence took Clemson to another level. If he didn't do that, then Kelly Bryant would have started. Then they wouldn't have won a national championship. Trevor Lawrence took them from a college football playoff team to a national championship yet again after Deshaun Watson had departed. He is the one that makes this Clemson team look so good. Yes, they have great receivers. Yes, John Ross is great. Yes, T. Higgins was phenomenal. Yes, Travis Etienne is fantastic. Would they be as good with a Kelly Bryant at quarterback? Would they be as good as Justin Fields at quarterback? I don't think so. I think Trevor Lawrence is that special. The only real pro comparison, because we love to do this with college football quarterbacks. We love to say, Tua Tagovailoa is left-handed Drew Brees, and Joe Burrow is very similar to Tom Brady and Kurt Warner. Kyler Murray is the next Russell Wilson. Jordan Love is the next Patrick Mahomes. Think of in your head right now, who plays like Trevor Lawrence? I'll give you a second. You want to know who came to my head? John Elway. Yes, John Elway came to my head. That was the first person I thought of when I thought of Trevor Lawrence pro comparison. Yes, I'm talking about the dual threat running ability. We know what Trevor Lawrence can do on the ground. He's run multiple times, multiple touchdowns, hundreds and hundreds of yards. Fantastic runner. One of the best pure passers I have ever seen in my life. I don't think you guys understand. If you just go to YouTube right now, type in Trevor Lawrence highlights and watch, and tell me he's better. He's not the best player in college football. He absolutely is. Yes, his stats last year were not as good as Justin Fields. Justin Fields had a phenomenal season for Ohio State. 41 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, incredible stuff. And again, this is not a knock on Justin Fields. Justin Fields will be a fantastic NFL quarterback. He's a fantastic quarterback prospect and could even, this year's draft could go 1-2 Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. But to say he is better than the quarterback who elevates Clemson, who won a national championship, who started his freshman year, who has thrown a combined 66 touchdowns and 12 interceptions in only 2 years of college football, do you know he's only going to get better? He's only going to get better. Next year, watch Trevor Lawrence throw for 42 touchdowns and 8 interceptions and have a 67% completion percentage and throw for over 4,000 yards. And watch the Jacksonville Jaguars win 0 games to go get Trevor Lawrence. And again, not a knock on Justin Fields, but when Pro Football Focus and Mel Kiper say that Trevor Lawrence maybe shouldn't be taken atop of the 2021 draft, I find it laughable when you look at the size, the strength, the athleticism, the leadership, everything about Trevor Lawrence. He plays exactly like the great John Elway did, and I really do believe that he will have not necessarily a similar career, but a similar playing style to that. Now, there's a difference. We're in the golden age of quarterbacks right now. I've mentioned this before on my episodes. We are in the greatest stretch of NFL quarterbacking we have ever seen. Almost every team has a guy for the long-term future. And if they don't have a guy for the long-term future, they either have a really high-level stopgap quarterback or they have a veteran quarterback who's been there forever, the Drew Breeses, the Ben Roethlisbergers, Aaron Rodgers, things like that. Now, due to this level of, high-level quarterbacking, the definition of a franchise quarterback needs to be changed. And in my opinion, a franchise quarterback is no longer a guy who you can win a Super Bowl with. Now that sounds crazy, and everyone's like, isn't that the bar? You want to win the Super Bowl? Yes, of course you want to win a Super Bowl, and yes, If you win the Super Bowl, you're a high-level quarterback. But the difference between a franchise quarterback and just a Super Bowl winning quarterback, which quarterback makes your team better? Which quarterback can deal with injuries in his wide receiver core? A poor offensive line, even poor coaching, a poor defense, a tough schedule, a hard division. Those quarterbacks, the quarterbacks that can take all of those things, the bad offensive lines, the bad coaching, the bad receivers, the bad defense, and still elevate their team, win a ton of games, go to the playoffs, win their division, win a Super Bowl. That is the difference between a franchise quarterback and the all-time greats than it is just a high-level quarterback. I'll give you an example. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. Is he better than Tom Brady? Well, Nick Foles beat Tom Brady. Why isn't Nick Foles a franchise quarterback of anybody right now? Why is this his third team in 3 years? Because he's not a franchise quarterback. We all seem to agree that Nick Foles isn't a franchise quarterback, yet he wins a Super Bowl. So just because you win a Super Bowl does not mean you're a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. Trevor Lawrence is a franchise quarterback. In fact, he's a generational quarterback prospect. So if you want to do into kind of a tier list, right? There's the high-level quarterback starters who you can win games with. You can even win a Super Bowl with. The Ryan Tannehills, the Jared Goffs, the Matt Ryans, the Jimmy Garoppolo, like I mentioned in my last episode. Then there's the next level. There's the franchise quarterbacks, guys who elevate your program, double your win total, everything like that. Kyler Murray. Who else? Justin Fields I would even put in that category next year. The Joe Burrows, the Tua Tagovailoas, people like that. And then you go to the next level, which is people who can win, they'll walk in day one and your win total will double. That's when you get into the Russell Wilsons, the Patrick Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons. And that's where I put Trevor Lawrence in. Watch the team who lose, let's say the Jacksonville Jaguars go 2-14 and they secure Trevor Lawrence. They're the ones who get the number one overall pick. I guarantee you the Jacksonville Jaguars will at least win 4 games with Trevor Lawrence as their starting quarterback that year, bearing any injuries. He is that good. He will double your win total as soon as he walks in. Trevor Lawrence doesn't need the greatest receivers, doesn't need the greatest offensive line, doesn't need the greatest coach, can play in the toughest division, can play in the big moments, and he elevates to that level, and he elevates your team to that level. That's what makes Trevor Lawrence so special. I don't understand the argument or the debate how Trevor Lawrence wouldn't be the best quarterback in this draft and shouldn't go number one. If Trevor Lawrence came out, not even this season, he'd be the number one overall pick. He would have gone way before Tua Tagovailoa, way before Joe Burrow. He would have been number one of the Bengals. Even the year before that, the year Kyler Murray came out, after Trevor Lawrence's true freshman season when he won the national championship, I guarantee you the Arizona Cardinals would have taken Trevor Lawrence. That's how good he is. He could have played in the NFL 2.5 years ago. That's how special he is. I don't understand the debate how Justin Fields could be better than him. No knock on Justin Fields. He's not Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is a special type of talent. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. When we come back on the other side of the break, we're going to stick with football. I'm going to be going through each AFC team, giving you their record prediction, who I think will win the division. We'll do AFC today, and my next episode we'll do NFC record predictions. So after the break, some AFC record predictions. Stay right there.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to Extreme Cage Fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening so far. I just got done talking about Trevor Lawrence. Now I think he is potentially a generational quarterback prospect and will definitely be the number one pick overall next year. Speaking of, picks and record predictions, today for this next segment, I'm going to be giving you guys my record predictions and standings for the AFC for the NFL today, and then in my next episode, I'll be giving you my NFC predictions. But for today, we'll do the NFC, and let's just get straight into it, starting with the AFC North. So obviously in the AFC North, real tough division, but the Ravens are definitely going to win it. I think they're going to take a little bit of a step back. They obviously went 14-2 last year. I think they're going to go down to 12-4. And that's not even like a detriment to how good the Ravens are, who's on their roster. In fact, the Ravens only upgraded in the offseason. I think it's actually because the Ravens are just going to lose 2 more games this year because of how much better their division has gotten, which I'll get to in a minute. But yeah, the Ravens are definitely going to go 12-4 and win this division in my mind. Number 2, I'm actually going to give it to the Cleveland Browns. I think they're going to go 10-6. I really like Kevin Stefanski. And I think I mentioned on my last show how maybe even 2 shows ago, how the Cleveland Browns are like the Noah's Ark of the NFL. They have 2 of everything, 2 good receivers, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, 2 good running backs, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, 2 good tight ends, David Njoku, and Austin Hooper, who they just signed in free agency. 2 good tackles. They just drafted Jedrick Wills, and they obviously signed Jack Conklin. I really like their coach, Kevin Stefanski, and I think this team is really, really similar to that Minnesota Vikings team that was led by Case Keenum that went 13-3, in which Stefanski was the offensive coordinator for. So when I look at this Cleveland Browns team, they really remind me of that. They have a pretty decent schedule when you look at it. Their division's obviously pretty tough. I do think they'll go 10-6 and make the playoffs this year. I think Baker Mayfield will have a bounce back year. I know a lot of people, including myself, have criticized Baker Mayfield, and this is a make or break year for him. He absolutely has to nail it out of the park this year. And if he doesn't, then you could really make the case that the Browns should move off of him. I think Baker Mayfield will step up to the plate, get those numbers back up to, similar to when he had his rookie season. There's just too much talent on this Cleveland team to underperform again. Would it surprise me if they underperformed? No, it's the Cleveland Browns. They totally could. But I really like Kevin Stefanski. I like the coaching staff. I think the Browns will make some noise this year and go 10-6. Third place in that division, I think, is going to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who obviously went 8-8 last season with a quarterback combination of Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, one of the best young defenses in the NFL. I love TJ Watt. I absolutely love Mika Fitzpatrick. I love the entire defense. I love Mike Tomlin. But we just don't know what Ben Roethlisberger is. Ben Roethlisberger is, I believe, 38 years old, coming off a major shoulder or elbow surgery, I can't remember. And we don't know what he is. Ben Roethlisberger always gets hurt. He's probably going to miss another 3 games or so this year. I don't trust Ben Roethlisberger, to come back and be the Ben Roethlisberger we've always known. His numbers have declined over the past recent years just because of age, nothing else. And in my opinion, I don't see how the Steelers could, dominate the Ravens and dominate the Browns like they have in years past. I think the Browns got better, obviously. I think the Ravens actually got better on their roster, just their schedule is a little bit different. So I think that the Steelers are going to go do 1 game better this year, and they will definitely compete for a playoff spot in the AFC, especially since now there is an extra playoff spot in each conference. I could definitely see the AFC North sending 3 playoff teams, and at 4th, you guessed it, that is the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm a big fan of Joe Burrow. I think he's incredible. A really interesting stat about Joe Burrow actually is in college, especially this last season, his numbers actually go up when he's under pressure. His passer rating, his quarterback rating, his yards per attempt, which is absolutely crazy stuff we've never seen in college football. Obviously had probably the greatest season a college quarterback could ever have in college football history. So the 4-12 record is nothing to be as ashamed of, as a slight to Joe Burrow. That would mean that the Bengals would double their win total, which I think Joe Burrow will do. I think Joe Burrow's good enough to help them do that. I really liked their draft. I liked T. Higgins, and I liked some of the other guys they drafted as well. They actually were pretty aggressive in free agency for Bengals standards, which is kind of crazy to think about because the Bengals historically are known as this, cheap organization. They don't spend a lot on free agents, but I think the Bengals realize they're not a free agent destination, so they're going to have to throw a little bit more cash at players for them to sign there. All right, next up is the AFC South. This is a really tough division because obviously last year the Tennessee Titans kind of caught lightning in a bottle last year. Obviously beat the Ravens in the playoffs. Also beat the Patriots went all the way to the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. So I am going to say that the Tennessee Titans are going to win this division by going 10-6, which is one game better than they did last year in the regular season. Again, I like Mike Vrabel a lot. Think he is a fantastic coach. He's really awesome. Love the Titans defense. It's hard. It's physical. Obviously, Derrick Henry's the best back in the league, I think, by a considerable amount. Maybe, CMC kind of, that's Christian McCaffrey, rivals him a little bit in the passing game. But Derrick Henry's an absolute unstoppable force. I think they're going to ride the coattails of a good season last year. I don't think they're going to fall off. I think they're going to do one game better. I don't think they're going to be crazy and go 12-4 or 13-3 or anything like that. 10-6 seems like a good number. They're actually going to be tied for the division win with the Houston Texans. I think the Titans will just get it on a tiebreaker. I would have the Texans winning this division because I think definitely that the Houston Texans have the best quarterback, Deshaun Watson, in this division by far. But I just don't see a lot of areas, if really any areas, where the Houston Texans actually improved this offseason. They lost their best receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. They got Kenny Stills, which is, they still have him, so he's nice. They're going to be fast. They got Brandon Cooks. So it appears that the Houston Texans are kind of switching to more of a fast-paced vertical passing game, which is why I don't have them losing any more games than they did this most recent year. I think 10-6, they'll stay at that amount. But I do think they lose the division out to the Tennessee Titans, and I won't be surprised at all if Bill O'Brien, his job is potentially on the line this season, then there could be a split there at the end of the year. Next up is the Indianapolis Colts, who I have going 9-7. The Colts are good. I think they went 7-9 last year. I love their offensive line. I think they absolutely killed it in the draft for not having a first round pick to get Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Jacob Eason, who's a pretty good quarterback prospect. To add that to that fantastic offensive line they have there led by Quentin Nelson. Obviously traded for DeForest Buckner to shore up that defensive line. The Colts are really going all in. My only issue with the Colts is with my issue with a lot of teams that are stuck in this 9-7, 7-9, 8-8 range is their quarterback. I like Phillip Rivers, the guy. I think Phillip Rivers, if this was Phillip Rivers, 7 to 10 years ago, the Colts would have probably won this division. But just because Phillip Rivers now has a good offensive line, I don't think that means that he's going to completely, revitalize his career. People forget Phillip Rivers was on a good team with the Chargers last year. One of the best defenses in the league, one of the best receiving corps in the league. Had two great backs, Melvin Ingram, Austin Eckler. And it was on Phillip Rivers last year. The Chargers were so bad last year because of Phillip Rivers. People forget, the season before last year, they went to the they went to the second round and lost to the New England Patriots, obviously. And ever since then, Phillip Rivers has been on this huge decline. So it's hard for me to believe that just because the Colts have a really good offensive line, all of a sudden he's going to be rejuvenated and revive his career. The Colts have a worse receiving core than the Chargers. They have a worse defense than the Chargers. They might have a better coach and a better offensive line, and you can argue about the running back room, but Jonathan Taylor is unproven. I like Mack a lot as well. But I just don't see the Colts being better than a Deshaun Watson-led Houston Texans and the Titans last year, who seemed like a really complete and deep roster as long as Ryan Tannehill keeps being this decent distributor for them and is still, is that Nick Foles type quarterback that a lot of teams see. All right, and to round out the division is the Jacksonville Jaguars. I talked about them a lot in the Trevor Lawrence segment, my last segment. They're going to be terrible. Like I mentioned in the Trevor Lawrence segment, I won't be surprised if they go 0-16 to land Trevor Lawrence. I don't think they will. I don't want to predict a team winning absolutely 0 games. But they're going to win between 0 and 2 games this year. I was generous and had them winning, going 2-14 max. And it's no slight to Gardner Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew is a really energetic, awesome, accurate quarterback. If I had to compare him to anybody, he's pretty much Case Keenum. I think he'd be a really high-level backup in the NFL and could definitely be a starter on a good team. Again, in that tier of those Nick Foleses, Ryan Tannehills, where if they have a ton of weapons around them, a good defense, a good coach, they can totally be your quarterback, and you can totally win playoff games with them. So I just don't think that's what Jacksonville is. I mean, Jacksonville is really selling off everybody on their team. They gave Calais Campbell away to the Ravens for like a 5th-round pick. He was their best player. Jalen Ramsey was obviously traded last season. Yannick Ngakoue, the defensive ends on the trading block, he'll get moved before the season starts. Leonard Fournette is also apparently going to get moved before the season starts as well. So if you thought the Miami Dolphins were tanking for Tua or the Bengals were tanking for Joe Burrow, watch what the Jacksonville Jaguars will do for Trevor Lawrence. They're going to get Trevor Lawrence. They're going to be the worst team in the league. I have them going 2-14. All right, next up is the AFC East. So there's no more New England Patriots. No more Tom Brady. The dynasty is effectively over unless Jared Stidham miraculously is the Steve Young to Joe Montana sort of effect here. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Buffalo Bills are definitely going to win this division. They're favored to, I think, and they deserve to be. They pretty much brought everybody back. Pro Football Focus did a thing of how many snaps are returning to your team, like percentage-wise, and Buffalo was right up there with the top with like the Chiefs and the Ravens and teams like that. In an off-season where, there's going to be a shortened OTAs, kind of a weird off-season, the more, same people you bring back, same system you have back will benefit you. Bills are bringing their quarterback back, their system back, almost all their roster back, and their coaching scheme as well back. So that, for me, that solidifies the Buffalo Bills will go 10-6 this year, make the playoffs, be the division lead. I don't think Josh Allen is anything incredible like some people believe, but I think the Bills will win this division as it's not the greatest division in the world. Second, I have the Miami Dolphins going 8-8. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to start the year for the Dolphins. They went, I think, 6-10 last year. Oh no, 5-11. The Dolphins went 5-11 last year, as they were supposed to be tanking. I think Brian Flores is a fantastic coach, one of the best young and up-and-coming coaches in the league, but I don't think the Dolphins have completely turned around their rebuild yet. Ryan Fitzpatrick will start the season, probably play the first 5 or 6 games, do what Fitzmagic does, win a couple of them, lose a couple of them, probably start 3-3. They'll turn it over to Tua Tagovailoa, who will go through his rookie groin pains, also have some good moments. Dolphins 8-8 seems like a good record for me, and then towards the future, the Dolphins could start to look to be some contenders. But for now, I have them going 8-8. Next up is the New York Jets, who I like a lot about the New York Jets. I like Sam Darnold. I'm higher on him the most. I like Le'Veon Bell. I like that C.J. Mosley's coming back. I didn't necessarily love their draft. I liked Mekhi Becton a lot. That was a good pick, one of the more obvious picks to get a left tackle. Denzel Mims is an okay receiver. Would have liked them to see maybe get a receiver in free agency. They let Robbie Anderson go for nothing in free agency. He went to Carolina. So I like a lot of things about the Jets. I have them going 6-10 mostly because their coach. I don't think Adam Gase is a great coach. I think Jets fans will tell you he's not a great coach, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's his last year there. I like their GM, Joe Douglas. He's really good. He seems to be finally getting Sam Darnold some weapons. Sam Darnold's one of those young quarterbacks who, unfortunately, is just surrounded by poor coaching and not enough talent. That happens to a lot of young quarterbacks in this league. Sam Darnold's doing his best. Obviously, they had a strong end to last season, but I just don't trust Adam Gase and the Jets coaching staff to elevate the Jets roster even further, so I have them going 6-10, which I believe is a step either one game less than they did last year, if I'm correct on that. And finally, I have the New England Patriots, and I know some of you are going to look at me on crazy. How are the Patriots last in the division? Because they did not get better in a single area of their football team. They did not improve at any positional group, despite maybe tight end. They drafted 2 tight ends in the mid-rounds. Jared Stidham is not the successor to Tom Brady. The Patriots will be in a quarterback market next offseason, looking for a Justin Fields, a Trey Lance, somewhere in that area. Jared Stidham is a nice prospect. I don't think he's a starter in the NFL again. I have the Patriots going 5-11, which I think is generous. I think their defense will carry them to 5 wins. They'll probably beat the Jets once, probably beat the Dolphins once, maybe even the Bills once. The Patriots are also going to go 5-11 because they're in the hardest schedule in the NFL. They have to go play the Chiefs this year, the Ravens this year, the Chargers this year, all these really tough and hard teams, on top of not improving your roster in any specific area. They're only getting older. Edelman's only getting older. Like I mentioned before, Jared Stidham's going to have to all of a sudden be this great successor to Tom Brady with expectations at an all-time high, and I just don't think he can meet it, so I have the Patriots going 5-11. And finally, we have the AFC West, where I have the Kansas City Chiefs obviously winning this division, going 13-3. Patrick Mahomes is incredible. The Chiefs brought everybody back from their Super Bowl roster. I don't expect a major Super Bowl hangover for them. They drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's one of the most underrated draft picks in this entire draft. He will have an immediate impact on the Kansas City Chiefs, and you'll see how great he is. He might even win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think he might even get over 1,000 all-purpose yards in the running and passing game in his first year in the Andy Reid Chiefs system. It's going to be a ton of fun to watch. In second place in the division, I have the Denver Broncos going 10-6. A lot of teams have the Denver Broncos as one of their sleeper teams. I'm one of those people. I absolutely loved their draft. They drafted Jerry Jeudy, obviously, KJ Hamler out of Penn State, I believe, and they've completely surrounded Drew Lock with pure speed around the edges, which is absolutely awesome. They still have Phillip Lindsay, who's a great running back. They signed Melvin Gordon in the offseason. I love the Denver defense, always have. My only question about Denver is Vic Fangio, but from everything that I've seen, he's a good coach. I think Drew Lock's going to pop off this year. A lot of people, I think Colin Cowherd said that he's a dark horse MVP candidate. I wouldn't go that far, but a lot of quarterbacks have that year 1 to year 2 jump. I think Drew Lock will have it, not necessarily to the level of a Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes did, but definitely enough to get the Denver Broncos to 10-6. He will have a great offensive season. Jerry Jeudy, I think, was the best wide receiver in this draft class, and KJ Hamler's extremely fast, great speed. They also have Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant at tight end, just great offensive talent all around. That's exactly what you want to do with your young quarterback, something that like a Sam Darnold hasn't gotten the luxury to have. So watch out for the Denver Broncos this year. I think 10-6 is a good record for them. Third place, I have the Chargers going 8-8. I think that Tyrod Taylor is better than Phillip Rivers right now. I'll just say it as it is, and I think just because of that, the Chargers will have an improved record. I think they went 5-11 last year. Tyrod Taylor is able to move the pocket, won't turn the ball over. They still have a great, offense with Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, guys like that. Fantastic defense. Melvin Ingram, Joey Bosa, Derwin James. They drafted Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert will get his chance at the end of the year. If you remember what the Broncos did with Drew Lock last year, which was play him, I think, the last 5 games of the year, I think that's when we're going to see Justin Herbert around the last 5 games of the year. So he won't play as much as Tua Tagovailoa or Joe Burrow their rookie year, but I think we'll get a glimpse of Justin Herbert towards the end of the year. I think Tyrod Taylor will have a nice season, and once the Chargers fall out of playoff contention, last 5 weeks we'll see some Justin Herbert, and I have them going 8-8. And finally, in the AFC West, I have the Oakland Raiders. I have them going 7-9. I like John Gruden, the coach. He's doing way better than I thought he would when he came out of the booth for Monday Night Football and came back to the NFL. Mike Mayock is doing way better as a general manager than I thought he would as well. What's my issue with them? They have Derek Carr, and I think Derek Carr is an okay, nice prospect. I think they also need some better receivers. They got Henry Ruggs. I don't think his injury is going to impact anything. I think he should be ready to go week 1. I like Henry Ruggs a lot. I think Derek Carr is okay, but in a really tough division with the Chiefs loaded roster, the Broncos loaded roster, the Chargers also have a loaded roster. That's going to be really hard for the Raiders to compete on paper-wise with the rest of these teams. And I think after this season, you will see John Gruden finally move off of Derek Carr and in his search for a future quarterback, a Justin Fields, a Trey Lance, somebody like that. All right, so that's my AFC predictions, records, division titles, things like that. In my next episode, I will be giving you my NFC record predictions. We'll do the same thing, but with the NFC. We're going to take one final break, and on the other side of the break, I will be giving you guys my NBA record predictions, or not record, excuse me, award predictions. Executive of the Year, Coach of the Year, Sixth Man, Defensive Player, Rookie of the Year, Most Improved, and MVP, so make sure you stick around for that. We're going to take one final short break, and we'll see you on the other side.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Thank you guys so much for tuning in so far. So for my last segment, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to predict actually the NBA awards when this season concludes. I'm just guessing here on pure speculation on who I think will win each award after the NBA season concludes. So let's just get right into it. Starting off with Executive of the Year. I think that's going to go to Lawrence Frank of the LA Clippers. I think, well, a lot of teams had a good offseason last offseason. You know, obviously, Lakers got Anthony Davis. Miami Heat got Jimmy Butler. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant went to the Nets. Obviously, I think the one with the biggest payoff, though, so far would have to be Lawrence Frank, LA Clippers, who got both Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to go to the Clippers in the offseason, and obviously it has paid off as they're one of the powerhouses in the NBA now. So I would give that to him for Executive of the Year. For Coach of the Year, I have two options here. One of them is Frank Vogel, who is the head coach of the LA Lakers, who has really resurgenced the whole Lakers brand, bringing them kind of back from the grave. Obviously, he coaches LeBron James and Anthony Davis, so you might be thinking, how hard is that to do? But they surround the pieces with LeBron. It's not just LeBron and Anthony Davis. He's coached up the shooters. Guys like Alex Caruso have improved. Also, the defense with like JaVale McGee, Avery Bradley, things like that. That's coaching. The defensive system is coaching. The offensive scheme is coaching. While you might have superstars like LeBron James and Anthony Davis, coaching absolutely matters in this league and matters in the NBA. So Frank Vogel is probably going to win this award, but if it wasn't going to be Frank Vogel, I think it'd be Eric Spoelstra of the Miami Heat. I don't think any coach has done more with less in the NBA. The Miami Heat are a top 4 seed in the East. They obviously got Jimmy Butler, but the coaching improvements that have led Bam Adebayo to take such huge steps, who I will talk about later, Tyler Hero, coaching up Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, things like that. So I think Frank Vogel will win it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Eric Spoelstra definitely will be a candidate, but if he also won the award as well. For Sixth Man of the Year, now this is a little complicated, so I'm not actually totally familiar on qualifications of Sixth Man of the Year, but if I had to pick someone who spends a majority of the time off the bench when everybody's healthy, I would pick Spencer Dinwiddie of the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, when Kyrie went down, he's been the main guy for Brooklyn, averaging 20 plus a game, night in, night out, showing up in clutch moments, really keeping the Brooklyn Nets season alive, and is really the main reason why they are in the playoffs to begin with. I would give it to him. Now, if Spencer Dinwiddie doesn't qualify because he started too many games since Kyrie Irving's injury, he'll be starting pretty much the entire playoffs as well when that resumes. I would give it to Dennis Schroeder of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who comes off the bench and averages 20 points a game. One of the best bench guys in the league, one of the best spark plugs. You can also throw in names like Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell. Lou Williams has obviously won this award before. And honestly, this award should just be renamed the Lou Williams Award. But if I had to guess, my vote would be Spencer Dinwiddie, and if he doesn't qualify because of too many started games, then I would give it to Dennis Schroeder of the Oklahoma City Thunder. All right, next up, we have Defensive Player of the Year. There's a bunch of guys you can go with here. You can go with Rudy Gobert, Steven Adams, Anthony Davis, who I think will win the award. I think it'll be Anthony Davis, one of the best defenders night in, night out. Lockdown defender, super athletic, can guard, almost 1 through 5, great shot blocker as well. There's a ton of other names you could have in here. You could have Rudy Gobert of the Jazz, Steven Adams, like I mentioned, Patrick Beverley if you want to get creative. A guy who I really think deserves votes defensively but doesn't get the credit because he's a guard is Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart should win this award, honestly. If I could pick actually anybody to win this award, it'd be Marcus Smart. I don't think he will win the award. I think it'll be Anthony Davis. But Marcus Smart is a guard that almost guards 1 through 4, if not 1 through 5. He's tough, he's physical, he's the leader of that Celtics team. Other guys you can maybe throw in the Defensive Player of the Year rankings, Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat maybe, who's a versatile defender, can guard 1 through 5. But I think this award will go to Anthony Davis, as I do think the Lakers are going to win a lot of awards this season, including the NBA championship. All right, next up, we have Rookie of the Year, who I believe will go to John Morant. Now, you can throw other names out there like Kendrick Nunn, even Zion Williamson, but I think due to Zion's small sample size, this award should go to Kendrick Nunn, especially if the Memphis Grizzlies do end up making the playoffs. The Grizzlies pretty much got worse in every way after the offseason. They lost, obviously, Marc Gasol in a trade almost a year and a half ago. He went to the Toronto Raptors. Mike Conley obviously was traded to the Jazz. Yet, the Grizzlies got better, and that's because of Ja Morant and how special he is. So I think Ja Morant definitely deserves Rookie of the Year, and I honestly don't think it's that close. The only other real argument you can make is probably Zion Williamson, but due to Zion's small sample size, like I mentioned before, I do believe Ja Morant is the one who will get this award. All right, next up we have Most Improved. Now there's two guys that this really comes down to, either Bam Adebayo, the center of the Miami Heat, or Brandon Ingram, the small forward for the New Orleans Pelicans. And what I came down to was who had the bigger statistical jump, and that actually goes to Bam Adebayo. I think he's made more improvements than Brandon Ingram has. Not to discredit Brandon Ingram, he's a fantastic scorer, versatile wing. But what Bam Adebayo has done is really shown how, and really not necessarily revolutionized, but has shown the blueprint of what the modern NBA center needs to look like due to shooting. Bam Adebayo is one of the most versatile defenders in the league. I think by the end of his career, he'll be a multiple-time defensive player of the year, can guard 1 through 5, made huge strides offensively, obviously made his first All-Star game this year as well. And while Jimmy Butler is the best player on the Miami Heat, you can argue that Bam Adebayo is actually the most important when it's from front end, from end to end, defense, leadership, attacking the rim, rebounding, everything like that. So I think Most Improved will go to Bam Adebayo, but I would not be surprised at all if Brandon Ingram got the nod for that award as well. And to wrap up the show, the last award I have, MVP, I have it going to no one else but LeBron James. Again, I've talked about this many a times. You can have, make the argument that Harden deserves it, that Kawhi, Giannis Antetokounmpo, guys like that deserve it. But I really do believe that this is like the Lakers' year. LeBron James is the reason why the Los Angeles Lakers are back to who we've always known them to be, the historic, the prevalent, the dominant franchise that they are. I think LeBron James deserves this MVP. I really do believe it's his year. LeBron is the most valuable player. He has been for the past 15 years. You could have given LeBron this award every single year. Everybody knows it. I know it's a regular season award, but I think LeBron James really does deserve this. He's the most valuable player to his team. Without him, the Lakers are not what they are not what, and they will go back to what they were, really, if LeBron was not on this team. So yes, I do believe LeBron James will win this MVP, and the Lakers will win the night with, Frank Vogel potentially winning Coach of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year Anthony Davis, and I do believe the Los Angeles Lakers will also win the championship. So that is my NBA award predictions. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in today's episode. That's going to be it for me. Again, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media, do all that good stuff. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening, and I will see you guys in my next episode.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.